Hey, Indiana, welcome, good evening, and welcome to the Who's Left Podcast, a show about Indiana politics, history, and culture from an unapologetically leftist perspective. My name is Scott Aaron Rogers, and I am broadcasting from Bloomington. So, tonight, our guest is Drew Cox, one of 9 Democratic candidates for Congress in the state's sprawling 4th District. From his website, quote, born and raised in Indiana, Drew is the son of a dedicated elementary school teacher with 35 years of service and a fourth-generation farmer. In 2012, he was honorably discharged from the United States Marine Corps. After completing his military service, he used the GI Bill to pursue higher education at Indiana University and went on to earn a doctorate in music from the University of Illinois. Drew currently serves as a visiting instructor at Purdue University and remains actively involved in his community. He is a proud member of the local Marine Corps League and American Legion Post 11. Drew also performs as a percussionist with both the Lafayette Symphony Orchestra and the Lafayette Citizens Band. So, hopefully, by the end of our discussion tonight, we'll have a better sense which lane Drew occupies in this crowded field. But before we get there, a quick ask. This is an independent media project. We don't paywall any of our content. We don't have advertisers. We don't have billionaire benefactors. Only individuals like you keep this thing going. It is a foundational principle of Who's Left and the Progressive Indiana Network that we refuse to hide valuable information behind paywalls in the middle of a political crisis, even if that's not in our financial best interest. So please, if you find value in this work, go to progressiveindiana.net and subscribe at the paid level. It's only $5 a month or $50 a year to help us build the infrastructure that will pop the right-wing media bubble in this state. You can make a one-time contribution to Who's Left on Cash App or Venmo. Links are in the show notes. If a paid subscription is not in the cards for you right now, that's okay. I get it. You can still help out by liking and sharing on social media, commenting, leaving reviews, that's a big one, providing feedback, and forwarding articles to your people. You get us the next time. Mostly, we just want you here in this community of Hoosiers dedicated to making this state and its government work for all of us, not just the elite few. Please, join us. Follow me on Blue Sky, Instagram, and Threads at whosleft.us and on Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube at Who's Left. Progressive Indiana Network's handle is the full spelled out name on most sites, but on Blue Sky and TikTok, it is PIN Indiana. Please help us grow with a follow wherever you're at. Tell the others. Let's build a radically democratic Indiana together. Now, let us welcome to the show, Drew Cox. Drew, welcome.
Hello. Thank you for having me, Scott. Appreciate it.
I really appreciate you being here and taking time out of what must be busy time on the campaign trail. So glad to have you here, and we can hopefully talk to lots of folks tonight in one fell swoop. So listen, Drew, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself to begin with?
Well, thanks you already kind of covered the most important stuff. I'm teaching music I teach music history and jazz history at Purdue, which I think jazz history is a very important thing. I'm very happy to teach that class. I'm very proud to teach that class. That's my favorite class I've ever taught in any college, and I've taught at several colleges and universities at this point. I also teach drum set at Purdue, and I'm the first person to be the drum set teacher at Purdue University. Purdue's like massive and one of the most recognizable schools in the world. That's what these rankings they have. And I was like, hey, you don't have a drum set teacher, and every college has a drum set teacher. Most recognizable school in the world. So started drum set.
Places are famous for having a very, very large drum. It's kind of part of their who they are.
Yeah, the world's largest drum. And then a huge band program. They have tons of kids. It's kind of I used to direct bands, but I don't anymore. I now just do classroom classes, but the amount of people that participate in bands is crazy. They have like 5 or 6 jazz bands a semester and, several orchestras and like 10 concert bands and all this stuff. But yeah, no drum set teacher until now. And And enrollment's pretty healthy. It's like 14 out of 16 in semester 2, but I only have 1 year or 1 semester contracts at a time. So it's kind of rough to plan for much because there's no long-term guarantee. But hopefully this political aspiration works out. And if it doesn't work out, I've really this last year has kind of transformed me into thinking about a career of service, or even if doing something else in the political field, being a member of the party and being much more participatory in the political process than I have been, than I was in my younger years, for sure. So,
if anything, over the last 10 years, we've really seen that you can't take these things for granted. Democracy really is not a spectator sport. You have to participate, and folks that look like us, couple middle-aged white guys, we have unearned political capital, unearned privilege that it is imperative that we spend when not everybody is allowed to speak up in the same way that folks like us are, unfortunately. And therefore, we have to use that voice, that unearned capital, to help pull others along. So we get to the place where everybody can use their voice equally.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, by all means, you.
I was going to say that speaking of having a voice, that's part of the reason why I decided to run, is people not having a voice, and particularly with ICE and the way that our federal government seems to be terrorizing, blue states and blue cities, but also communities of color. And me and you, people with the last name of Rogers and Cox, probably not going to get detained by ICE. Possibly could, but the likelihood is so much lower. And I think that's just one of many reasons that I'm running. But if we don't do something to stop this constant, just terrorization of communities, then I think it is on us. I think it's on us right now and in the future if we don't do something to help our fellow neighbors and speak out against these atrocities.
Absolutely. And this is certainly something that we're going to come back and talk to a little bit here. But, right at the top of the show, I like to do this segment that I call Easy Dubs, the who, what, when, where of journalism, the easy W's. And, we covered the who you are, and where is Indiana's 4th Congressional District. And, man, it is a sprawling, large, rural, gerrymandered district. I think the 8th is a little bit bigger. And perhaps a little more sprawling, but your district is huge. Can you kind of tell us a little bit about it? What kind of communities are in your district that you've been hopping around and going to?
Yeah, so we've got the 4th district is, just to the west of Indianapolis, and it wraps down to the south to Martinsville, and it goes up north all the way to Jasper County, which is like Rensselaer. So you've got about 16 counties, Lafayette, northwest of Indianapolis, about an hour. That's pretty much smack dab in the middle of it. So that's nice that I'm in the middle, but I'm still traveling an hour and some change north to the far end, an hour and some change south, hour and a half almost, really, all the way down to Martinsville. And then west to very rural area of Fountain County and Warren County. And east, it touches the very tip of Kokomo. So it is a massive district, and it's difficult to keep up with, all the different people in all the different counties. You've got a Democrat chair in every county, and not only that, you've got the members of the party, and trying to remember their names and trying to keep up and maintain contact. But mostly everyone's very welcome. So as we go around to different places, we we sit and listen, and that's what, we listen to what is important to people. That's what's lost. That's why we're going against Jim Baird, is because Jim Baird is not a person that is even remotely available for his constituents. So we're going around and we're saying, hey, we're doing this right now. We're doing this before the election starts. I'm listening to what the people in White County are talking about, and they talk about data centers. And I listen to the people in Boone County, and they're talking about something different. Every community has one thing that kind of unites all the communities, though, is there's a lot of Indiana really loves to bring in corporations and say tax abatements, particularly right now, it's data centers. We were really obsessed with giving corporations all these benefits to get them to come here, and then they actually are terrible for the communities. They increase electrical power consumption, price goes up, they don't give back to the communities. They don't have to stick around for the communities, so but we're getting around to this district pretty well, and it's about 900, it's 800,000, 900,000 people in about 15 counties. So it's a big bear.
And I can only look. Jim Baird is 80 years old.
Yeah.
Like you said, he's not terribly, accessible to the population. I can only imagine when I'm 80, I do not want to be traveling around giant congressional districts for any reason. I want to be pulling up a rocking chair, and watching the game. and frankly, I wish Jim Baird would do the same.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. I'm not going to be in it when I'm that age. I mean, like, I'm pro term limits. This Washington thing needs to be more of a revolving door. You need to get in and do your thing and get out.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, listen, I can go on my rants. I'm unusual in that I am not. I don't support term limits. I do support people coming in, getting the job done, and then going back and doing their other thing. But also, if people if they're are actually representing their communities well, and their constituents like them, they should keep going back. I think the problem's not on the back end there so much as on the front end, where the incumbent has such an advantage in terms of fundraising. And if we had publicly financed elections, maybe we could take care of that on the front end instead. But that's neither here nor there. I guess what I really want to know is, what is your why? Why now? Why 2026? Why are you throwing your hat in this very crowded ring to hopefully unseat Mr. Baird?
Well, Jim Baird is not doing his job with regard to representation. He's not representing the people, and that's the first thing. But also ICE, which is just this militarized force, and I think we need to get rid of ICE. I think we could do things the way we did before 9/11 with the INS, the Immigration and Naturalization Service. That the terrorist attack of 9/11, part of the thing that we really lost there was having this increased surveillance and this increased this stronger force of dealing with United States citizens in a way that doesn't really help us as citizens as much. So Jim Baird, all Congress, it's the job of Congress to dole out tariffs, and they're not they're not asserting dominance with regard to that. So that's one thing that I could do. That's something that would make this economy more affordable, because our Congress is not doing anything with tariffs. They're letting the president shoot from the hip. And another thing I would strongly advocate for is healthcare costs are out of control. And while the ACA has helped in some ways and expanded coverage, you still got private insurers that can make, profit off of healthcare, which is intrinsically flawed. So I would advocate for Medicare for all, for every single person, or a single payer healthcare system for absolutely everyone. we are surrounded by states that have legal cannabis. And as a result of that, our state loses a ton of revenue to other states that we could use for our schools, our Title I. We're so obsessed with giving tax breaks to people that have more money than they can spend. We have to generate more revenue somehow. I was in Delphi, and I was talking to their mayor, and he's a Republican. He was talking about SB1 in Indiana is cutting budgets so hard that a police officer just retired, but they're not going to be able to replace him. So we need, and if we did legalize cannabis, which the reason we can't is because of entities like Eli Lilly, which we can talk about them and their $30 million salary CEO separately. But we could generate 200 million in revenue a year, and we could do things like we could give half of that, wouldn't be in my purview as a federal congressman, but we could solve a lot of our community school funding problems. We could do a little bit of property tax relief. There's so much we could do with that, and we have to do something because we just really love tax breaks for people that can't actually even spend the money that they have.
Certainly. Yeah. Well, I guess let's dig in a little more there, Drew. So, I guess what do you view as the biggest problem in U.S. politics? Like what's the first thing or the biggest thing you need to tackle if you get to Congress?
Well, that's a tricky question in a time in which people like Steve Bannon say we need to flood the zone.
Mm-hmm.
The purpose of saying things like that is so that you can't pick up one thing and fight it because there's too many things to fight at once. So as far as the first thing I could do, the first thing I could do as a congressman would be first have a town hall in every community and say, what is it that you want? And set not me, what is it that you want in the community? What does the community want? And so that's kind of our first order of business. We've made this pledge that when before the general election, even that we will have a town hall. We will have had a town hall in every single county. So that's like 14 whole counties and like 3 partial counties. So the first order of business that we're going to have is we're going to have a town hall in all of those locations, and we'll base our legislation on that. We'll base what I do in Washington on that. But we're already starting to do that. And one thing is, people are losing Medicaid, people are losing disability, people cannot afford health care. So the economy is not affordable, but also healthcare is completely unaffordable now that these ACA subsidies have expired. My nephew was born on Medicaid. He was born with a heart defect, and Medicaid made it possible for him to have a heart transplant at the age of 2. So he was one of the youngest kids in Riley Children's Hospital history to have a heart transplant. So over the summer, at the age of 14, my sister and brother-in-law lost Medicaid, and they have wild bills and a ton of medications that my nephew has to take every day. Other kids from Riley Children's Hospital are losing Medicaid. They're losing disability. So one thing we're hearing a lot about is affordable health care and moving towards a single payer system, addressing the for-profit status, the for-profit isms that exist in our healthcare that make it possible. I don't like to see us extending ACA subsidies either, because in the sense that that's just giving more profits to companies. But at the same time, what solution can Congress give you? I don't know what they can give you in a society that allows you to pay your CEO $30 million a year and lobby against cannabis and lobby to keep themselves so well, positioned and profitable in modern society.
Yeah. Well, and you mentioned like the economy and healthcare as if they're like two different things. I mean, like healthcare is a huge part of the U.S. economy, and it's certainly a huge part of household budgets. The insurance premiums have spiked. The ACA, like you said, those premiums have doubled and tripled in many cases, and even private insurance follows, right? And
Yeah.
and what you're getting for that exorbitant price keeps going down. You got your premiums, and you still have your copays, and you still have your deductibles, and you keep getting less and less. And like you said, the CEOs keep getting more and more, and it is completely untenable. That's something I was going to try and tease out of you here tonight is like, where are you on this? Is continuing to tinker around the edges of the ACA enough? Republicans are trying to, repeal it again, or just completely neuter the ACA. And I think, if nothing else, like you said, the subsidies show if we keep subsidizing that and chasing that, the insurance companies just keep hoovering up that extra money. It shows the fundamental flaw in the ACA in the first place. Remember, where did that come from? It came from the Heritage Foundation. That was the Republicans' answer to universal health care. They came up with this after Bill Clinton was trying to push universal health care after he won in 1992. And they were like, oh crap, well, we got to come up with something. They came up with the ACA. Mitt Romney ran with it in Massachusetts. Obama's like, okay, well, hey, we can get something done. Maybe we can get Republicans on board with this. It's their idea. Turns out, no, they didn't support that at any point because they didn't want to give him a win. Maybe we should have gone big and aimed for, if you recall, public option was on the table at the time in 2009. At the very least, we should have gone there. And it's becoming more and more obvious, I think, now that some sort of universal health care, whether you call it Medicare for all or call it something else, like every other major country in the world, we need to do that.
Yeah, we have enough money to do that. I think we can. The first thing that this government did in the inauguration last January, we saw the richest people on the planet descend upon the Capitol, and we got tax cuts for billionaires, and we don't even have free lunch for our most needy students in schools. And we have schools with all these lunch debts, and our priorities are so out of whack. It's hard to talk about it with a straight face, but we can see what causes this. We can see the problem, and it is, I think, largely money in politics and Citizens United. And,
there it is.
And we could, and I could definitely see where as far as term limits goes, I could see where you would not disagree with term limits. I am actually a little bit more moderate on term limits than some people in my team. We kind of centered around an idea of maybe 3 terms for a representative or 2 terms for a senator. But that also is, when I say that, I'm thinking about for people that accept PAC money. That's for people that accept huge money. It would be tough for me to say that about someone like Bernie Sanders, who does not take, Bernie doesn't take money. So it's like, I don't know, should he be a casualty of term limits if he's a person that only is getting money from teachers and factory workers and unions and stuff? It's a very good.
Well, what happens is you wind up running people out who, do things like develop institutional memory, and, they show the new senators and representatives how this thing actually works. So those folks are turning over, but the lobbyists stay the same.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And I think you mentioned, the money, Citizens United, that is kind of the thread that runs through all of these things. And I guess what I want to get at is the word that Democrats are throwing out there again and again and again this year is affordability. Well, how do we tackle affordability without taking on the wealth class without taking on the donor class. I think these things go hand in hand, don't they?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I like what I heard Bill Barr, or not Bill Barr, Bill Burr. Which one's the comedian?
Bill
Talk.
Burr. Yes, Bill Burr. There's Bill Burr. There's Bill Maher, and then there's Bill Barr.
Yeah. Yeah. Talking about like, well, if someone only can have like $900 million so that we can all have, like such in our minds we have like such common sense. Like, yeah, well, if you can only have $900 million, and that means we all have healthcare, but good luck clawing that. You're not going to be able to. That's not a very winnable fight. So my solution is we have to generate more. We have to generate more revenue with things like cannabis legalization. We also need to figure out a way to reform Citizens United or something. Like Elon Musk gives $300 million. A foreign, a person from South Africa giving $290 million to the presidential campaign obviously is going to have a huge effect.
There's your foreign election interference right there.
I mean, to me, that's just interference. Like, how in the world is that legal? So, but the value, having values and electing people and that have grassroots. I mean, there are enough people running now that I think we can make a difference. There are so many people running in so many races that I think grassroots candidates will have some say in 2026, even if there is some election interference, even if the government, if the federal government is trying to federalize elections, which I hope to God that they're completely unsuccessful in whatever they're trying to do. But there are so many people running in so many races. Like last election cycle, if you're familiar with Tiffany Stoner.
Yes.
So she ran as a representative just south of me. I can't remember. She's in Hendricks County, I believe. And when she ran, she was a very strong candidate. And kind of towards the end, her opponent got a big donation. And it was just like, woohoo. All of a sudden, Tiffany lost by a handful of votes. The GOP is not going to be able to do that surgically this time around. There are too many people. And that kind of solves all kinds of problems. Like our campaign has a specific goal of energizing and activating young folks wherever we go. So when we go to Boone County Young Democrats, we helped stand them up or stand them back up. And when we go to certain places, we make connections with high school kids because our lack of participation we're like dead last in participation. And I feel like we can solve all kinds of problems. If we get these 20 to 30-year-olds to vote, I think we can have everything we want, but we are like dead last in voting participation. So we have this plan, and our campaign has very young people in the Discord, and they're assigned with very important jobs. And we show other young folks that they are important and that they are as valuable as, like I say in our Discord, I'm like, there's nobody I don't think I'm more important than any of you. I think we're all essentially just going for the same thing. And I feel like when we can get the young folks, and most people look at this, when I tell people this, sometimes people are like, oh, well, I don't know why you're wasting time with that. It's like, well, if that's what your attitude is, then I don't need to talk to you. I'm trying to solve this problem that I think takes care of all kinds of problems. And getting young folks to participate would be tremendous for our society.
I like the way you framed it. It's like, the campaign, it's like a race car team. Here, this is a good analogy. We're in Indiana, right? I mean, like the driver is the person that they say won the race, but I mean, they cannot do it without the guys changing the tires and the guys refueling the vehicles and the comms people and everybody else. And it really is a team sport,
Exactly. And I was floundering. I mean, I told you before that I'd started running back in, I think I may have gotten on the ballot in June or May. And for a few months I was running by myself, and I created a Facebook page, and I was driving around by myself and going places. And then I had a person reach out to me that was working on Jackson Franklin's campaign, but he lived in my district. And he's like, "Hey, I'm going to jump over." That's my campaign chair, Colin. And he's like, "I want to jump over to your race, bring this knowledge because I actually live in your district." And I was like, "Okay, well, thanks. Hopefully that doesn't irk Jackson too much. Thanks, Jackson." And then I had a buddy from the Marine Corps reach out to me, and in a very short amount of time, I had these two super solid people, and all of a sudden, we went from first gear to third gear, and we've added a lot of Purdue students. There are, and I do not talk to my students. None of my students ever. I talk about this in class. This is completely outside of of classroom hours or my capacity as a visiting instructor. But the Purdue Democrats, that was another group that did not have a charter for a little while. And we're not responsible for that, but they stood back up, and they're growing and they're very healthy. And we have several people from that group helping our campaign. And that's what it's going to take. The young folks, we're trying to, and they're really starting to do amazing things, and they're connecting. The Purdue Democrats are connecting with these other young Democrats, and that's what it's going to take. Especially, so you see this Turning Point. They're trying to get Turning Point in every high school. I'm like,
yeah.
I'm like, I don't. I'm like, there needs to be a reaction to that.
It really does. Well, they know. I mean, the Republicans especially, their bread and butter for the last several years with the old folks. That previous generation has been a little more conservative. Folks our age are not as much. And then they always say you get more conservative as you get older. I'm not seeing that with our generation. If anything else, it's the opposite. So as those older folks are, dying off, they need to groom the next generation of right wingers. They've been doing it with these manosphere podcasts and stuff.
Yeah.
Turning Point is part of that, and it is especially concerning that you see the state interfering to help them with that project.
Yeah, that's troubling to try to get a Turning Point chat. I mean, that's just I think that's just that's a blatant constitutional violation.
They can do it organically. More power to them. I don't think they can do it. I don't think they're that popular. I think their ceiling is 35% of the population, as it kind of has been.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah. Well, so listen, you mentioned the Boone County and the data centers there. The LEAP project is there. I think it was maybe yesterday that like Mike Braun, the dichotomy just side by side was staggering, because on one hand there's this social media bill going through the state house currently, and they're talking about how the big tech firms are poisoning our youth with their garbage. And then on the other hand, he's like, hey, Meta, one of the giant tech firms, come to Indiana, build your giant warehouse here. Let's have a ribbon cutting, have our water, drive up our electricity rates. No, you don't need to pay any taxes. Don't worry about it. And it's like,
yeah,
how do you hold those two things side by side, my guy?
It's it's so hysterical. We have so many moratoriums on renewable energy in Indiana counties. Like there are 20 plus counties that have moratorium on renewable energy. And so you can't have renewable energy in so many counties, which is not very pro-capitalist, by the way.
That's big wind farms up in your district, isn't it?
We got a lot of wind farms. Up just north of Lafayette. Industrial power generation or commercial power generation is not for homes, but we've got a ton. And I think it's that's one thing. It's not very pro business to have all these moratoriums, but we don't have these same moratoriums, at least in numbers, on data centers. And I think that's one thing I could do as a congressman is let's regulate these data centers and say these data centers can come in if they're going to have a closed loop system, if they're going to benefit their community, if they're not going to get a tax abatement, and if they're not going to leave in a few years. And so that's something that Congress could do. But right now, yeah, Mike Braun is saying things like, well, we don't want to be left behind. We don't want to be left behind with the data centers. I'm like, are you saying that like families with kids are really wanting a data center in their backyard? Like people that like wake up and go to work and drive their kids to school are like, man, we got to get a data center so that our super rich 1%, like what? Who do you think is getting left behind here, buddy?
Yeah, like if these things were benefiting the community, fine. If they were paying taxes into the community, that was raising revenue, that was allowed us to expand public services, great. They're not doing that. It's purely extractive. They come in, they use our natural resources. That money doesn't stay in our communities. These things don't provide jobs. Sure, during construction,
Yeah.
you get some jobs, certainly, but once the thing's built, they're employing dozens of people, not hundreds, not thousands, and they're not they're not putting money back into the community. When you hire lots of people, they go out into their community, they spend their money, and these things don't provide that. They just it's extraction in a way that is not as obvious as things like coal or mining. There's not a giant pit in the ground where they're extracting, but they're still extracting our resources. They're extracting the water. They're driving up our energy rates. Like you said, they're not putting anything back into the community. And this is the same handful of tech folks. This is your Zuckerbergs, this is your Elon Musks. These are the folks who are behind Trump, who are propping him up. He is an avatar for the oligarch class, right?
Yeah.
I don't think he's particularly intelligent. I don't think he's a terribly smart guy. I don't think he really believes much of anything other than enriching himself. But the oligarch class, they have a mission, and they're into eugenics and driving the climate off of a cliff. They're going to be fine. The hell with the rest of us. So I guess how do we rein those folks in? Now, we talked a little bit about Citizens United and stuff, but like a wealth tax has been debated, and I talked about it with Brad Meyer here a couple weeks ago, and we referenced Gavin Newsom out in California, and Gavin's not in favor of a wealth tax, at least out there, because he talks about capital flight out of his state. Well, at the federal level, you don't have to worry about that. Is that something you can get behind, or even if just like raising the top marginal tax rate back to a decent level, cutting out some of these loopholes? You got the carried interest loophole, the private equity, just so many loopholes. Like, these guys are fine. They can afford to pay a little bit more taxes, eh?
Yeah, I think raising the top marginal tax rate is at least a start. I mean, and also like the corporate tax rate is so low. It's very low right now, and people don't realize Dwight Eisenhower, Republican president, had a 90% corporate tax rate, 90, maybe 91 or something.
I want to say 91, yes.
And
at that point, you're splitting hairs. Those are the hairs I want to be splitting, not 28 and a half versus like 30,
Yeah. And when you have that rate that high, that incentivizes a company to do different things. That makes people you're more incentivized to spend money on your own infrastructure, on wages.
Yes.
The lower that it goes, the lower that your corporate tax rate goes, the more that you're incentivized to just say, hey, every amount of cash we have on hand, declare it as a profit. Cut as many jobs, as many shortcuts as we can, is whenever we get money, declare a profit because the rate is so low that we don't have to pay that much taxes on. So it just changes the way that corporations do business and treat their own employees. So corporate tax rate, in addition to raising the marginal tax rate, is also something that we just don't look at very often. We have been largely brainwashed by businesses to still believe in trickle down economics. Basically, we already know that hasn't worked. That once Reagan was president, we saw basically the gap between the upper and the middle class and the lower classes just do this, and we should have learned by now, but we haven't learned that there is no such thing as trickle down economics, and corporations' problems are their problems. They don't have to become our problems. Like corporations aren't people.
Yeah. I think one of the primary problems that we've run into over the last, as long as I've been paying attention to politics for the last 30 years, is that Democrats have kept chasing that corporate dollar. We got our asses kicked in the 80s a couple times in presidential elections, and decided, okay, well, if you can't beat them, join them. And ever since the Clinton era, too many Democrats have gotten cozy with corporate cash, with the pharmaceutical industry, with big tech, with the insurance companies, you name it. Their corporate donors aren't necessarily the same as the Republican corporate donors. That's more of your, oil and gas and
private prisons,
the extractive industries. With military industrial complex, that sort of thing. Democrats are in bed with that too. But the problem is, I think we've seen since the great financial crisis, right, that neoliberalism, that trickle down Reaganism, whatever you want to call it, it hasn't worked. It crashed. It's all held together at this point with one, just printing a bunch of money and propping the system up that way, and then duct tape and bubble gum and paper clips and just MacGyvered together. But it hasn't been working for the average person. Now, I'm not seeing the big economic vision from Democrats. Listen, Trump's wrong on just about everything, but they talk about change. They talk about doing things a different way. The tariff stuff, again, probably not the way to go. Maybe targeted tariffs, fine, whatever. But I see Democrats far too often. They want to go back to the good old days of the Obama era, and I don't think that's a thing we can do. What is our next vision? I don't know. Can you begin to articulate?
I think, for one, building from the ground up and understanding that it has to be from the ground up, and it's not going to work from the top, because it's top down is the way that I think is what you're describing. We keep everything is building from the top down. So building it from the ground up, and I think part of building it from the ground up is, again, and I'm just going to keep going with this over and over, is energizing and getting our young folks to participate and understand that they are important and that they can run for town council when they're 18 years old in the state of Indiana, and they can get a little paycheck. I think that some of it is maybe apathy, but I think it's actually mostly it doesn't matter. I think they think it doesn't matter if I participate. That's how messed up this process is. So we're attacking multiple things that when you and we're getting, even if young folks are just voting, but not just that, we're trying to get folks to participate in these weekly meetings, to try to go to this event, to maybe knock on doors. building it from the ground up, I think it's going to start with people that are younger than me and getting them involved. And I think they're the ones that can really save our democracy, that can save our, it's not a pure democracy, it's a representative democracy. But I think building it, when I say building it from the ground up, I mean, I mean young people, but I also mean, we have to have a strong middle class. Middle class has been shrinking, and if we don't have a strong middle class, then we don't have much of a country. So, yeah, I think one solution is, reining in on tariffs, but also is that going to immediately make things more affordable? Are things going to immediately come back to where they were if all the tariffs go away? It's like, I don't necessarily think that they will. But we don't really have an affordable economy with, just like, for instance, one thing, power generation. All of our politicians in Indiana, most of them, have been donated to by the millions from our power generators, because all of our power generators in urban areas are profit seeking.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, I think stuff like that, having a profitable, what's the acronym I'm looking for? Investor-owned utilities. Yeah.
Yes,
having investor-owned utilities, having for-profit healthcare, having Eli Lilly is able to pay their CEO $30 million per year, but you can't have THC in a gummy if you have seizures, for instance. But at the same time, you can get this new like THCA stuff. There's like this Delta 9 stuff that you can get at gas stations that's like 10 times stronger than just like regular THC, and you can get all this stuff at a gas station, and no one has any idea what that's going to do to you. But I feel like politicians largely don't know about that. We just have so much big money, like up and on top, and we have this cascading effect where the younger folks, the younger that you get, the more that they see that it doesn't even matter if they participate in the process, and we have to make them feel important. We have to make them know that they are important, and we have to involve them with us. And I think young folks are going to help us build it from the ground up. If we don't have them with us, then there's not, we can't build it around them.
It's been so difficult. I mean, you understand the disillusion, with folks our age and younger, right? Because we've seen this happen our entire lives. You try, you go out there and you vote, elect the guy that you want. You think there's going to be some change. Things don't change all that much. The rich just continue to get richer, and everybody else continues to struggle even more and more. And I think Recenter Indiana had a study come out a few weeks ago that, talked about how young folks like 18 to 34, they want to participate. But number one, they feel like it doesn't matter. Their votes don't matter. And then furthermore, like, they don't see themselves represented by the people that are running. They, largely feel like folks on both sides of the aisle are completely full of shit. And, you understand why in a lot of cases. And it's unfortunate. Like, but how do we break that log jam, right? Like right now, you mentioned that we're not a real democracy, right? The way the founders set this thing up, I like to tell people, like, we're still running on like the beta version of the democracy software, right?
Yeah.
We invented this thing. There's been some bug patches and updates throughout the years, but man, like we've never really upgraded fully. So we're stuck with these anti-democratic features, like the Senate, really over represents rural states.
Mm-hmm.
I think you got the Electoral College there also. You
Yeah.
know, and then you've got the Supreme Court too, which is supposed to be this, you know, neutral, august body, but like our current Supreme Court is full of political hacks. How do
Yeah.
we break through that? You have it's like a combo lock. You have to line up the presidency, the House, the Senate, and the Supreme Court to get anything done. How do we break that logjam? Like, what's a big thing we can do to fix that?
You said something earlier uh, about voting. One thing we could do is make election day a national holiday, and get everyone thinking about voting for one. Making it easier to vote, like Indiana is one of the hardest places to vote. We've got the shortest, time for
That was
mail-in
one of the things in that Recenter Indiana survey that I mentioned. The folks don't have enough time to vote. Like the early
Yeah.
voting hours are small. The polls close at 6.
Mm-hmm. And that a lot of that comes down to clerks. Like what who's your clerk in your county? So that then goes back down to like me on this campaign trail trying to get 18 and 20-year-olds like, hey, you can run for town council. Because like a clerk, and what I find out is so these local positions are so massively consequential. When I decided to run for office, I'm like, man, I'm running for Congress, and the party and the people around me are saying, well, why did you decide to jump right to, all the way up to federal? It's like, you could have done this and that. And I was like, well, I mean, I live in the district of Sheila Clinker and Ron Alting, and those are two state a state senator and a state rep that are both pretty strong. They've been around for a long time. It's like, I don't know if I could break through there. But that's one thing I'm learning is like all these positions at the local level have gone unopposed. So many different like councils and trustee and all this stuff have just gone to whoever was running, and that's now finally starting to change. And our campaign is having a part of it. We're trying to get folks to be involved in whatever the smallest campaign you can think of, because those things are so massively consequential. And when all these people are running in all these small races, then the money on the other side has to be spread out to face that.
Yes.
So like I was mentioning about Tiffany Stoner, so getting involved with a local office, and that's what I'm going to do. I think we're the strongest campaign in our crowded primary for a few reasons. But if for whatever reason we don't make it past, I'm like, well, that's fine. I'll get caucused in. I don't care, whatever the smallest thing is. If someone's not running at this, because that small local office is actually massively consequential. That county commissioner is the reason that this data center is here, and we can't, just making a hypothetical, is the reason that we don't even have the ability to see inside the data center or know what it's going to be. So getting these people, and that's starting to happen, which is really exciting. People are running in all these races, and in Tippecanoe County, which is a kind of notoriously low participation Democrat county, even for being the biggest county possibly in the 4th district, you're seeing all these people running all these small little offices. And if there's just one person there, even if they don't win, that makes a huge difference. That changes the mindset. So I'm not sure that the solution is really like, I don't know if they have a policy solution to your question. I think it's more so we have to keep spreading awareness and keep and I know I've certainly changed. I did a year ago. I was the Trump presidency had just started, and I was not someone that had run for office before. And then several years before that, I was probably just a voter. But now I'm like, this is life or death here. This is This is a massive consequence. So I believe in our kind of constant campaign of the young folks. That's what I keep saying over and over is they're going to save us, and we cannot build from the ground up around them. We have to build it up with them, and then we can have nice things again. Then big money doesn't control everything. And that's another thing about big money is in every election. And if everybody's running in all these races, then that spreads the big money out. And we saw that race in Texas, that he was outspent. I can't even remember his name. Mehmet?
Like 20-1 or something. Yeah.
Yeah. He had been outspent hugely and won by a
bigly.
I was like, can I say that? And he won by a considerable margin. And people like me, they're like, you're so young. I'm like, I'm 42. I'm not really that young. I'm like 22 is young. I'm like, but that's the problem is I'm considered young for election standards. So like, oh, look at this young guy running over here. I'm like, well, I think I'm kind of like in the middle.
You're right where you should be. We got to get these fossils out of here. Baird's got to go find a rocking chair, man. Drew, listen, tonight has flown by. We've only got a couple minutes left. I want to make sure you get a chance to tell people where they can find out more about your campaign, perhaps how they could donate or volunteer.
Thank you, Scott. Yeah. So on the our website is very simple. It's just drewcox.org, DREWCOX.org. From there, you can see the different ways to donate. You can mail a check, old school. There's the P.O. Box 56, Lafayette, Indiana, 47902. Or you can go on there's a link to Act Blue. So you can donate on that channel, or you can also just donate directly through the Squarespace website. You can also sign up on the website for a newsletter, or if you wanted to volunteer. But volunteering doesn't involve necessarily, if you can't physically do much, if you can offer your opinion, that's fine too. Any level of help is appreciated because we are a grassroots campaign and we need all the folks helping out. That's what it's going to take for us to make a society that's more equitable for all of us instead of 1%, is all of us regular Joes are going to have to participate and do whatever you can. And we can have nice things in our society again.
Very good. Love to hear it. All right. All you folks out there in the 4th District, you know what you got to do. And you know what? Be it Drew, be it one of the other 9, participate, please. We need all the help we can get. Everybody needs to be participating in our democracy, lest we cease to have one. Ladies and gentlemen, Drew Cox. Drew, thanks for joining us here tonight.
Thanks so much for having me, Scott. Appreciate it.
All right. Once again, that was Drew Cox, candidate for Indiana's 4th Congressional District there, based in Lafayette, and with a 15 to 16 county radius around it that he's got to cover. All right. So tomorrow night, we will be back here on these same channels with Sharon White, a state house candidate up in Northeast Indiana. That will be at 7 o'clock. Join us if you can, especially if you are in that neck of the woods. Then Saturday at noon, I will be back with Mad Voters State House Week in Review as we discuss the legislation that is moving through the General Assembly. Bills are beginning to hit the governor's desk, so check that out to stay up to date. And of course, Sunday morning at 10:30, I will be here for Who's Left This Week, Indiana's only Sunday morning political news show by and for progressives. My guests this week are Bartholomew County Democratic Party Chair Ross Thomas and Muncie area activist Chelsea McDonnell. Hope to see you there in the comments. Thank you once again to Drew for this interview, and thank all of you for joining us. One last reminder to please consider supporting Who's Left and the wider Progressive Indiana Network with a paid subscription if you're able. This independent media project relies solely on the generosity of kind patrons like you to make this information available for free to everyone. Again, that's at progressiveindiana.net. We could also really use a follow on social media at Progressive Indiana Network on Facebook, Instagram, and Threads. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel at the same handle. Over on Blue Sky and TikTok, the handle is PIN Indiana. You can find me on the social medias at Who's Left. Direct message me anywhere on any of those sites with feedback, tips, ideas, and concerns, or email me at scott@whosleft.us. Finally, please forward the show to a friend and have them pass it on to. Let's keep this project going. Let's build a truly democratic state, one conversation at a time. Until the next one, this has been the Who's Left podcast. I'm Scott Aaron Rogers. Love each other, Indiana.